Illinois, and he's been drawing and painting for his entire life. He lives with his wife, is it Therese or Therese? Therese in Williams Bay, Wisconsin. Hopefully you've read Paul's very interesting bio in the newsletter. So you know he paints in several media, but most often combines watercolor and gouache. According to Paul's bio and his Facebook page, he loves a lot of things. Family, which includes his Afghanistan veteran son, wife, and his 2 granddaughters. He loves that they live nearby. He loves his 2 rescue dogs, June and Oscar, and hikes all over the area with
Oscar Phil.
I know.
I got the last name.
He loves Far Side cartoons, guitars, old trucks, great restaurants, K-Dude shoes, and the rolling hills of our Midwest. Yeah. His painting subjects include patriotic themes, animals, landscape, guitars, and old trucks, just to name a few. Paul recently illustrated a children's book, Saving Truman. He has it with him right here about a young boy saving a hawksbill turtle. He'll be doing a book signing this Saturday at his wife's shop, Angela's Home and Garden in Walworth, Wisconsin. And in case that wasn't enough, he's also an art instructor for all ages at Faith Christian School in Williams Bay, a most rewarding and sometimes daunting task. There are several retired art teachers in this room who know exactly what I'm about. We have Paul take time out of his busy schedule to be with us today, so let's give him a warm welcome.
I want to applaud you right now because you're so well behaved. You didn't see anybody. Nobody wandering around the room. You did. You were very clandestine in your mission. Did you say you teach too?
Yes.
Oh, wow. How many educators? All right. Well, you know about teenagers. I'm not real sure what to do with them. They're up to about 4th grade. They're kind of a dream. And then you just go, what happened? Give up on them. I will figure them out. My theory is that individually they're great. You put a group of 18 of them together, they get really stupid. And they get, it's like, it's a community kind of a retardation. Just to go. So, but anyway, am I allowed to get up or do I need to stay?
No, you can get it.
I'm just going to briefly explain why these particular paintings are here. I got to work in gouache and watercolor. And gouache, I paint in a lot of things. When I figured out gouache, you know, we all have our favorite medium. And that I said, oh, this is it. I found my little Xanadu. This is 100% watercolor. And
Can you hold that?
yes, I can. So this is just kind of a fantasy painting. I don't usually try and do like an Audubon realistic thing. I just want emotion. So what I'll do oftentimes is I'll paint the entire thing and I will brisket, I will block out the things in the foreground and I will spray watercolor over the background, set it off in the distance. So that puts these things in the foreground very kind of 3D and you know, and then this is one of the originals from the book.
It's true.
So that's Truman. And boy, I had no idea how popular sea turtles were. So you do a whole makes the kids cry. The parents buy them for Christmas gifts. So we bought 50 books for the book signing on Saturday, and we pre-sold them. And we can't get more, so we're going to have a sign-up list for more books. But people want them signed. The author will be up there, and I'll be there. And so it's getting a lot of buzz. This one here. Now, I've got a background as an illustrator. I've been illustrating for almost 50 years. When you're an illustrator, you work fast. So you do a cover of a magazine in a day. You have no time, so you work fast. So this is what I call a one-day watercolor. I tell myself, it's going to be done today. no matter where it's at. The work is better in my case when I don't have it sitting around and I'm working, I write them. And the magic of watercolors is the brushes, and the key, I think, is to make them look effortless, like you just do these things in your sleep and they're masterpieces. When you go to work it, it's sharp. So on one hand, it's the friendliest of all mediums, on the other, it's the hardest, because you got to get it right the first time. And I came up with a quote, you're all free to use it. It was a brain dropping I had in front of my class. I said, wow, that's pretty good. I said, you don't master watercolors, you reach an agreement. What I mean by their watercolors are their best if you let them go free range on them. So I like to find a balance between control, that's where the gouache comes in, and free range activities with the paint. Because let's face it, it's magic. When you got a pool of water, you touch watercolor in it, and it does this dance. It never gets old. It's like those of us that are anglers, we never get tired of seeing a tug on a fishing line. We never get tired of watching watercolor do its thing. There, I went up and bought watercolor paper. I go up to Big Flicks in Milwaukee. I used to pay like $2 a sheet for arches, 300 pounds. I think I pay $30 a sheet now. But once you're used to the best, you're spoiled. So again, on this one, this is a watercolor. And this is what I typically do. I saw this interesting stump with these viney things on it. And then I saw a chickadee. And I thought, if I put those two together, that's a nice little scene. So if you notice the background is pushed back, it's faded, like there's vellum over it. That's that same thing where I spray white watercolor over the back of it. Not on the front, but on the back. And that gives it this nice distance. Now this one is pure gouache because I was looking for just serious detail. This is called Kishwaukee herring. And I was down fishing in the Kishwaukee in my chest waders, and I saw this magnificent tree. And then later on, I saw this heron. And I had my cell phone in my hat. So I took a picture of the tree. Later on, I did the heron. I thought, if I combine these into one scene, I'm going to have a winner. So you'll notice the reflection has a tint to it. Same thing. I sprayed blue over that so it just didn't run right into the, that's what separates it from this. And gouache is very good for this kind of thing. It's more dense than watercolor, but for gouache, all it is opaque watercolor.
Sure.
If you make it more watery, it behaves like watercolors, but you have the ability with less water to make it very opaque. You can get those great details in there.
What's your spraying instrument called for the?
Sometimes it's an airbrush, sometimes I just use a mister bottle. And that works fine. But it's a trick I tried one time like 30 years ago, and I said, that worked. So you keep it in your toolbox. This here is 100% gouache. You can see the colors are pretty vibrant. And you can do a lot of detail. And I stick with about 3 or 4 brushes. And lately I'm really into flat brushes. I love the look of what they can do. But this is at a place called Richardson's Farm. If you've ever been to it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why this thing is there. If you think it's a British caboose.
For you to paint. What else?
Yeah.
So, and then obviously the guitar wasn't there. That's one of my guitars. And I threw in some purple Martins and a crane. I was just really into cranes around that time. There's no reason for that. I just thought, let me take a test. So, artists, we can explain anything away, really. Well, I felt it. So here is a combination of watercolor gouache and colored pencils. So if you look closely, there are lines in the feathers, and a lot of that is just colored pencils. And that's another perfect marriage. Colored pencils work really well on watercolor paper with wash and watercolor. So these, I was living in Marengo and I saw these cranes out in the fog. I said, how do I do the fog? So I faded out the ones in the back again. And keep them full focus, create a little distance with that fog. And I do like sometimes we have a lot of white left instead of going border to border.
Is that background tone or is that the color? of the paper?
I sprayed white,
Oh,
Mr. Alred. So these were just as dense as he is, but just by spraying that little bit of white, puts him about 8 feet behind the,
It's never also happened.
Seen things. And, others, I live in Wisconsin, I gotta tell you, deer hunting is, it's a sacred. Even my little students, they get the day off to go hunting with their dads. So this is called buck season, and so, when you paint fish and wildlife and that, sell it on the website, the hunters are like scientists. They go, that must be doesn't look right. Doc, be over there. So if you look closely at just the fur on this deer, there's a combination of black and white pencils and about 3 shades of brown. You can do it in layers. And they know that. And they buy this print because they said, it's good looking buck. You can hand me that one.
Are they watercolor pencils or just?
Just regular prison color.
Yeah.
This is my brother's place when he lived in West Dundee. This is 35 years old. But the beauty of painting snow is you're not painting, all you're painting is in shadows that go across. And when I figured that out, I went, wow, that's easy. And then, so I added the cardinals, they weren't really there, and the birch tree for the texture and all that. You can do things like rust on a silo on a metal band. Watercolor is perfect. And the less you do, the better it works, it seems. So, did you say, what's our connection? Did you know my brother and his wife, Tom and Barb?
Barb.
In your one. And they're on Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, all right, this, when COVID first hit and we were all scared to death, it was like AIDS. We didn't know, oh, can I go outside? Whatever. So I have a beautiful studio we built behind my garage. And I said, I'm gonna spend 30 days in here. And I'm gonna do, I called it 30 days in Coronatopia. I did one painting every day. And it had to be on the side of my studio or in the garage or within reach. And I am an outdoors guy. I hate being penned in. But I thought just gonna use this as a challenge. So I came up with 30 paintings, one every day, all mediums. And it was, what an experience. It was, I said Coronatopia. I wasn't making fun of the fact that, oh, this is fun. I was saying this is a chance as an artist to like really hunker down and learn something. I've been doing this a long time, and that was quite an experience. Now, after this came along a little while later, I did for 3 weeks, a month, I did 1 day watercolors, I call them. And I told myself I have to start and finish it that day. It's not going to sit on the table. About whatever happens, happens. Well, they're the best watercolors I've ever done. Because like I said earlier, you can overwork them real easily. Now, these 3 back here, I'm working on a series of old trucks. My wife and I go to Door County a lot. And I just thought, I love old trucks. These are all actually different. This one here is pure black, so the color is dense and colorful. You can easily do a lot of detail. This is on illustration board, not watercolor. So I use cold press watercolor paper with a lot of heat to it. This is a flatter surface, but it still takes paint beautifully. And another thing I love about wash, give you over and over and over. It's watercolors, it's tough. Yeah.
Illustration board, she was there.
I have a friend that would take watercolors and pick it up and he bury it in ground for about a month, and he take it out. They are cool. The dirt stained them and an antique them, he pulls it off,
Oh.
and that's how he was showing. The different colors is the colors are more advanced,
Yeah.
but they're all rendered in pies. I think all they do is make more hidden in the water than you get more. The watercolor, you can't go down with it, but it's layer over layer. The beauty of wash, if you thin it down, it behaves just like a watercolor. You don't know the difference, but you have a little less water, and you can get the vibrant colors and the thickness. So these three are all, they're all part of the same series.
I think that's it as far as art could show you. So it runs the gamut. Now, one of my paintings I did during my little one-day watercolors was this. And there's nothing real complicated about it, but everybody, oh, we love it. How often did you show your work and people respond to the one you're personally not, it's not your favorite? No, oh, what? You don't know, look at this one. Happens all the time. So this was a dying tree, or it was going into winter, so the leaves were gone. And I love the texture of the bark and everything. And then, okay, in the end, I just said, need the colors on. Need some little leaf hanging from it or something. So I'm gonna do basically this. Or similar to it. So,
I got a spray.
no, you know, I could have. Invite me back in your, it's great for it. So I'll tell you, I was telling you about teaching and all. One of my first lessons I learned was don't let kindergartners paint. Not in watercolor. My classroom looked like Katrina sweats. The kids were wearing color all over, very happy. But oh man, that's it. All right, so what I've done is this morning, I didn't know how long this would take to dry, so I sketched this out before I came, and I just put some little bit of line behind. So
Now, did you spray that on or let it grow?
that's just with the brush, and I just wanted some of this, the pooling that takes place. And just slop, it gives it a background, but it's undefined. So when I paint, I'm not, in most cases, trying to paint a perfect tree or a maple or whatever. I just want something pleasant to look at. And if it looks enough like a tree, fine. Otherwise, if I see this with students of mine where they're trying their best, they think it's success if you make it look just like the photo. Well, to me, that's paying tribute to a photo. That's all that is. So I think where artists are special, we interpret. And I'll mention one of my students because I think I've learned something from her. She's autistic. And every project I give them, every time we draw a bald eagle, it looked like a wastebasket. And I'd say, that's your eagle? And so I said, let's try it again. Do it again. She painted me another wastebasket. And then I started looking closer, and it had a beak and eyes and little feet, but very, very stylish. So I said, I've seen artists that are very successful with style radically like that. She's just seeing things differently than us and interpreting. And I gave her a hummingbird project. She knocked it out of the park. And I learned something like that. We can get stuck in how we do things, and sometimes it's fun to just like radically do something different. So, all right. So what I like to start with It's clean water.
And
And what I've done here is that, on one side of my tray, I have put. This is all gouache along here, the colors I think I'm gonna be needing. These are watercolors. I'm gonna use a little of both. And this is, it's 300-pound Arches watercolor tape. When I pull the shelf open at Dick Blick, and I just wanna rub my hands on this and talk to it. You hear that? It's just a thing of beauty, fresh art supply. I don't know about anybody else. My studio will just be a disaster after a big painting. I always make a point to completely clean it. And I wrap the top of the table with new paper. I said, if you start fresh mentally, you're not just cranking out artwork. Everyone's gonna be a potential jewel. So I limit myself usually to 3 or 4 brushes. As if the pointing brushes, when you get them wet, you can do quite a bit of detail with that. Brushes this size are great for dry brushing. You rake that kind of sideways, you go, whoa, art, it can do all sorts of things. Lately, I've been getting on the flat brushes, and I love what you can do with flat brushes in all different scenery. This one I used a lot on this painting. There's a lot of things in here where I used a flat brush. All right, and then, hello. Wow. What am I wedding band? Yeah. Now, that's closed captioning, right?
Yep.
So if any curse words appear, it's because of my Bell's palsy. I'm not actually cussing, I'm just slurring a little bit. Well, I want them to know that. But anyway. All right, I like to. I'm gonna take this main part of the tree right here, and I want to leave the edge raw like this. I like that. And in fact, when I frame watercolors lately, I make sure I got this thing where you can tear one edge of the paper so they're all ragged, then you float it in a frame. And it's just, it's a good way to frame a watercolor. All right, I'm gonna put plenty of water on this. And one of the reasons I use 300-pound, it's like a roofing shingle. It doesn't warp and all of that, because I don't know who stretches watercolor paper. Anybody? But I'm too lazy to do that. So I'll just get the heavy paper.
Does the gouache work better on a big plate?
Doesn't matter. But I always get, occasionally I'll get 400-pound. And I noticed that they sell cold press and then something else that's, they got another name for it, but it's, to me, it's like comparing eggshell with satin paint. I can will look the same to me. I'm gonna get some nice watery Van Dyke brown. This is Winsor Newton watercolor. I'm not gonna fill this all in yet, but I'm just gonna get started letting this do its little dance. One thing to remember when you're painting something natural like a tree or something, nobody's going to take your watercolor and go compare it to that tree. They don't. Just make it look good. And then there's a lot of theory involved too. When you start, like I paint a lot of birds, and eventually you kind of realize, okay, this is what their feathers do. Oh, I love hiking this morning. We were watching Great Horned Owl. We saw its silhouette with a little bit of light. If you go out in nature and you get bored, then you're in a coma. There is so much to see. You could spend your life studying one beetle or a squirrel. You'd never run out of things to learn. We live in a magnificent world.
Do you always leave new paint out for every painting, or is that just for here in the demo of in Paris palettes ongoing?
It's with gouache, I leave it in the tray. with watercolors, I wipe it out and clean it. They don't resurrect as well as the gouache. When you go to bring it back to life, I have to work a little harder for it. Gouache, you get a little water on it.
So you have totally separate palettes then for each.
I'll do 2 trays, 3, 4, sometimes, and I'm sure you know, like an enamel pan, there's no better mixing tray than that.
Does wash bubble and flow like watercolor?
It does. But if you add less water, the less flow. And I don't know why. I like to add some Prussian blue. Everything reflects what's around it, even a tree, people, whatever. And I started really appreciating. I didn't understand at first that people that paint portraits, you'll look, there's a lot of blue in face because we reflect what's around us. And so I like to always add some Prussian blue. In skies, I always add purple to clouds and shadows. If you paint a shadow black, you kill it. I had an instructor in college that said there's no true black in nature unless you're inside Carlsbad Cavern, you know. So I combine with the Prussian blue, purple, and Van Dyke brown, and we get a good shadow that's got some light to it. And I'm going to put some of these knobs on this tree because they're always interesting. All right, I'm going to add a little gouache to this. This more very well. I know I'm going to give this a light source coming basically straight down, so I'll keep that in mind as I paint this. And I would recommend to anybody try my one-day watercolor. I think you'll learn a lot from it. And I learned it from all my years as an illustrator when I had these type deadlines. Who's ever seen the Miss Chiquita thing with the food on her hat and everything? That's mine. I did the Chronicles of Narnia series. It's hilarious. My wife and I will be over at Lowe's. I'll see that ant trap? I painted there. In the grocery store, you see that dinosaur in the ice cream thing, being the dinosaur. It's too good to me. I'm impressed. My wife was very impressive, and she owns this shop. Have you ever been to it, Judy?
No. But what's the nature of her collection of stuff?
It's kind of home goods, it's garden, it's antique, but it's basically a mall. And it used to be a car dealership 30 years ago, and she turned it into this magnificent, it's like a Joanna Gaines kind of a deal, very, very popular. And
Is that how you met her browsing in her shops?
came along her shows. The 4 Fridays in Harvard, and somebody had told her about me. And she showed up to the art show, and I knew her from Facebook, and I saw her. It was lovely. And we got to know each other and hit it off, and it's kind of rare because we're both creative types and we get along beautifully.
Where is this shop?
It's in Walworth, Wisconsin. So they have an old green pickup truck out front that says Angelos on it. So they're kind of iconic and they we get people coming down from Milwaukee, come to there, and they come from Chicago and down here. And when you folks were pretty well shut down from COVID, We had Illinois people come in droves and take their mask off. And the store, I'm free. Agreed. It was like therapy for them. And it's, well, that area, I assume most of you have been to Lake Geneva. Yeah. It's gorgeous, but it gets overrun in the summers. So we hop on our little sports car and we head away. And we find the neatest little towns and dairy farms. It's awesome. So I'm adding a little contrast to where I know there's going to be contrast ultimately. You know, add a little more gouache in here. You can see this is gouache. It's dancing just like the watercolor did. I'm just keeping it nice and watery.
You're using the same brush in both watercolor and gouache.
Yes,
But I guess it doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. And I thought you were going to say you're still using the same brush. I use this one brush sometimes for an entire painting, where everything detailed up to bed. It's very versatile. This thing's got limited purposes. I've got one brush that's some sort of Russian sable. It's got a head on it. This one. I've had that forever. And somebody asked me about it, and I said, "It's up at money. Why you don't actually use it?" It was $300. Well, that would be blasphemous. I would defile it. All right, and that's more dark around here. And I'm going to do what I did here and fade that up. I like when a painting goes raw and just kind of disappears on you. Then it tells the person that's looking at it, "Ooh, somebody did this by hand." It's been fun with this book. And people say, "You painted those?" And it's like they start connecting the dots. Yeah, somebody actually paints those and somebody writes the words and it becomes a book. They don't just have it. It's like when people have been eating steak their whole life realize comes from cows. So when I'm doing branches coming off of this, I'm not concerned about covering up those lines. You can finagle the paint and cover that. There's one thing you really don't want in paintings is outlines, unless that's a style you want to do. But it's one of the things I always tell my students, that's really good, but you do an outline around. When you watch people walking around in front of you, do they have an outline? I guess not. My best student was a kindergartner named Hank. And he's a farm kid. And I gotta tell you, I love farm kids. They know what work is. And but the thing is, I'll tell the class, I figured they were gonna do a couple. We'll draw a combine in detail with a puppy up in the next lesson, let's do it. And he'll do a grain gun with a kitten behind it. This kid can tell you anything about farming. And I know some of the older kids in school, the teachers say they're the hardest working kids you can. When they grow up on a farm, you got to get things done. Who has seen the Paul Harvey God Made a Farmer commercial? I watch it like, isn't it like the best thing you've ever seen? It will move you to tears and you realize, we wouldn't be eating if it weren't for them. And a farmer, I told one of the kids in my class, the other kid was teasing him because he's a farm kid. And I said, hold on a second. Okay. I have more respect for farmers than anybody else. They have to be a meteorologist, a financier. They have to know animal husbandry. They have to handle drought and famine and excess rain and whatever. So who's smarter than that? Another thing I like to do, get some more materials. And if you have any questions, just holler.
How are you deciding when to switch back and forth? Just when I want it more opaque, I go with wash or?
Yeah, I kind of figured out Now, I want to get some more blue in here too, so I'm just gonna let it kind of dance around a little. And sometimes in the process, you're going, oh, that's too blue, but then you finish and you go, no, it needed it.
Oh, when you know how watercolor has a drying shift?
Yeah.
And it dries lighter.
Yeah.
Almost all the time.
Oh.
What is gouache do?
It's more consistent than that. It dries a little lighter, but basically it's watercolor just dialed up. It's just more pigment. So I love it because if you water, I've got wash paintings I did with more water. That's a lot. You wouldn't know any difference. And since the ingredients are the same, like Winsor Newton, that's natural pigments in there from berries and whatever. Same with the watercolor and wash. So you blend these things, and they're seamless.
I see you're blending on the paper.
Yeah.
Those watercolor and wash,
Right.
but I don't see, you don't really mix them on the palette.
I don't. And that's just a habit I developed for speed. Because a lot of what I do, are deadlines. I've got 4 commissions going right now, and I don't do as much illustration anymore because there isn't that much of that work. It all changed with the advent of the internet. But I got lots of commissions, and when I mix on the paper versus on the palette, it's just faster. And I like the looks better too. Now, that's not gonna be true for everybody. That wouldn't be their preference. But I choose to do it that way. You get this nice and wet here and work on this other big branch. And again, this kind of a brush, we turn it to its side and cover a pretty big area.
Number 8. They're worn off.
Areas, but probably worn off. It's ridiculous how
Say maybe a 6.
there's so much I don't know. I just saw the pointing one. Yeah, it's, and I gotta say, I am so impressed with you people taking minutes and notes and you raise funds. Don't you know you're artists? We didn't have our stuff together like that. I'm really impressed. My wife has called me free range. Never, because I just the one side of my brain functions pretty well, the other I'm like cousin Eddie on there's not much going on there. So thank God I married her, you know. Like the spreadsheet makes me break into hives. Instead of a lot. But do you know what I'm talking about with a really well done portrait of a human? When you start to study it, there's blue it. And there are all these unexpected colors, and it makes it more lifelike. There's so much to understand about art that I don't. Like I like good portrait photography too. I've got friends that take beautiful black and white photos, and they're more lifelike than the color photo. Why is that? They penetrate you. Now I know this is gonna go, I'll do the same light source here. So light's kind of coming this way. So I'm gonna start building up colors on this side of the branches. And that's another thing too. Nobody's gonna compare this to the original. So if you use theory for your shadows, like we know that branch is gonna cast a shadow down here, and it's gonna follow the contour of the tree. You can just use the theory to kind of make it up, and it's gonna be believable. Like, you know, I live in a really beautiful area up there, and you get lots of bald eagles and things. Today I'm watching turkeys ravage our garden. When I first moved up there, what the, a turkey, I mean, a turkey, and then pull over. Now, I'm going out the door, but get off my lawn. And deer, my wife's a gardener, and the deer just, but, and my neighbor threw a little picture, I feed the crows. And I kind of got them trained, you know, those big American crows that are like the size of a fox. And the biggest one is Leroy. And he lets us know when it's hungry, right? And so I ring his bell. And I put dog food out on our fence and then crackers down below. And within minutes, Leroy lets the other birds know, hey, free meal. So we were sitting out there once on having our coffee, and then the crows came and they all grabbed the crackers. And they're walking down the driveway holding the crackers like this. And they go and they dump them in this bird bath on the ground. Well, want to soften them up. You realize they're smart. They're really smart birds.
You can actually teach crows to speak with the parrot.
You know?
That the split intelligence.
Oh,
A lot of people will have them as pets. And they'll talk to just like the parrot will.
How do you know this, John?
It's actually, in high school, one of my classmates had a pet bird. And he used to fly in to the football games and land on the field, and walk around the football field, right here. Ready to hike the ball. Not so nice.
well, you've all seen It's a Wonderful Life. In the bank, there's a pet crow that rides around on Uncle Billy's shoulder the whole time. Yeah. They're the smartest song. They think they work together. They use tools. They will use, we watched them in Blue Jays too, they take the dog food and they dash it on the fence to break it into smaller pieces. Then they'll take that over and let it down and bird that song. I have cousins that aren't that smart.
I was in Florida biking and we pulled up to this warning spot where you could go up and look over a view. And the other riders came up and said, be real careful, make sure you don't have any edibles in your side packs because the pros know how to open the bags and get inside and make what's ever in there.
Animals are opportunists. And if there's a meal, they'll be pretty brazen about getting to it. Now we've got a lot of bird watchers that come up in our area. And when the bald eagles show up, I saw them 22 days straight at one point. We kind of followed them around, and the bird watchers, I posted a picture of a pileated woodpecker. That's the big one that's like the side of the hawk with the bird. They fashioned a Woody the Woodpecker after. Well, they kind of told me the woodpecker, they came up and drove. To them, that was a bigger deal than the eagle. Yeah. But the things I've got to see, not long ago, I got to see a kestrel hunted. And they hover in midair like an Osprey jet. And they stay in one place, but you see their wings are moving. And then they go down and come up with the field ones. And it's just magnificent to watch. And we are seeing interesting a bit, the sandhill cranes. They get to know you and they're not alarmed by your presence anymore. And I found a place where they hung out, a pair. And I would go out and I'd sit in the marsh and they were 2-3 feet from me. And I'd watch them preen themselves. And they're just so magnificent. That's probably where I got the tick bite. And that's why this is. But they are, first time I saw one, I thought, I'm not African. These things are so exotic and so big. How can it possibly be in the Midwest? And we didn't used to see them. I know you see them down here too. And I think that's in the last 15, 20 years.
It's not gonna have those states. Where are you, Minnesota?
William Bay. So I'm on Lake Geneva. So we've got the town of Lake Geneva. The lake is actually called Geneva Lake. But Montana, Lake Geneva, and Williamsburg. We love Williamsburg. I went to church camp there as a little kid, and I've always wanted to go back. Went to Camp Willow.
In Williams Bay?
Yeah.
I would do the kid.
Well, eventually they became Camp Kimberly and they moved to East Troy. But my memories of that camp, somebody had donated an old Chris Craft book. And I remember it's just even then, thank God, listen. Now I get to see them every day out there. And I don't know if you know about the money on that. It's one of the homes just sold for 40 million.
Yes.
The Dream House. And the money around that lake is just like nothing I've ever seen. That means there's a whole lot of these classic wooden boats, and they are just works of art. And Packard crafts and some of these custom boats I never realized. I got to talking to these people. They're $2.5 million a piece. I have a nephew that was not even 50 yet, and he sells optical cable. He now has a couple thousand employees. He's got locations in several states. He's flying on the Virgin rocket to outer space next year. And he bought a private jet with a pilot that's his. He doesn't share it. It says it saves him money because he goes to his different branches all over, but he never went to college for a day. We decided, it would be a good idea to sell optical cable. Because when those old towns put their power underground, it's what they use. So he has the workers that install it. He sells them the cable. He's just a man with a great idea and a work ethic, and he's building an empire. I wish they would, bury our power underground. That whole Williams Bay, but we have those power lines everywhere.
Or tell him you don't die.
And one of the things I've always loved about watercolor paper and this medium is that when you let things dry to a certain degree, you apply the paint, it does a whole different dance than when it's real wet. And we never know what it's going to do exactly, but it sure is fun to watch it do its thing. Got a little green there already. This is, I usually don't do any black at all, but I'm going to mix it with brown on the paper. Just because I know that's going to get kind of done. And I can even at this early stage start doing some little budgie textures that will show through. And then towards the end, we get to do some dry brushing, and that's always fun.
At 10:30, would you like to take a break?
No.
No? Okay.
So at this point, this branch here is dried. I'm basically doing another wash on top of it. It's another thing I love about watercolors. You can, multiple layers and they all show through. I was always a fan of Maxwell Parrish paintings. They're gorgeous, but they're atemporal. They're not watercolor. Atemporal, what makes egg yolk with pigment. And it's beautiful. Things was used through the ages, but the problem is, if you look at his originals now, they're covered with fine cracks. That egg in there didn't hold up through time. It's like tiny little mosaics.
My wash system that I'm using, I've been really happy with that.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've never had that. What kind of surface?
crappy watercolor.
You know, that's my biggest frustration with my classes. I've got limited budget, so I buy crappy watercolor paper. And it doesn't behave at all like watercolor paper. It's horrible.
Yeah, I can't, I have to do one and done when I paint little postcards because, there's no return.
Yeah.
Yeah, the paper comes off before the tank.
Well,
Keeps me fresh.
I bought paper for my little kids and the on a budget and said, you know, this is toilet paper. This stuff is not gonna hold up. Sure enough, these kids got it. It said multimedia. Right, so these kids are handing me blobs of pulp. It was-
Wash.
I have to share a few stories. You know, my mind is on my kids right now, and the things they say, I could write a book. So I have a few little girls that like to sing. Yeah, I think I will. I've got some sweet little girls. I have to clean up Mr. Turnbaugh. And then I had one little boy offer one week. Yeah. And he went over and like wiped off one table and he came up to me and said, "Can you make sure all the other teachers hear about this?" And then I mentioned my farm kids. I've got, I just love them because they're 4-H. And they're like America from 50 years ago. And they're Swedish kids. So I'm asking these little kindergartners, you know, who's got a pet? And I've got a dog, I've got a cat, our dog died. And the one girl said, I got 26 hogs. And she's proud of it. And she was a 4-H kid. She raises hogs. She took real pride in those raising those hogs. She knew she was going to show them. And then the same girl, a while back, asked me, "So what did everybody do over the weekend?" "Oh, we made apple cider donuts. We went to the corn maze." She said, "We butchered our hogs." And she was happy about it because she knows that, you know, we eat them. And her parents told her, "They're not your friends. Don't get pets, you know." And so her outlook on life and farming, it was refreshing. You can see the colored building up here. I've got lots of blue in there. It's just tan. I want no love. And I'm going to turn this so I'm not raking my hand over wet stuff. That's one of the things with managing a watercolor. You can always go to another area of paint and come back and let it dry a little. Otherwise, you can end up with a real mess. I'm still using this same brush. So it's very rich. I don't know what number it is. It's pointy.
Did you have any art school training?
I have a degree from California College of Arts. Back then it was called California College of Arts and Crafts. And that always embarrassed us because it's not California. They changed it. It is now the California College of the Arts. And they have campuses in Oakland and San Francisco. Being a corn-fed Midwestern boy going to art school in Northern California. Even back then, all those years ago, it was a culture shock. These people are odd. All right, I'm gonna give a little reddish brown right there. So much of what I do on these, after doing it all these years, I just say to myself, a little red day. And I kind of forget that I'm even doing 3. looking at that, what would make that shape better? What would make that color a little better? One of the things I liked about this was the wider areas kind of look like there's light coming through branches and hitting a few areas. That's always magical in a painting when somebody can do that. I've become a fan of a guy named Tom Linden, that's from Rockford. I met him up in North County and became friends, and he does these soft landscapes. I think they're oils, but he does watercolors too. And I love the way with simplicity, you can make it seem, you can walk into it. It looks so believable and appealing. And I love idyllic art. I don't paint a lot of like dystopian looking ugly stuff. I want it to be pretty. You know, the world is bad enough. That's like. Who was it that said, oh, no, it was Norman Rockwell. I just read a quote. He said, I paint the world the way I want it to be. Has anybody been to the Beyond Monet show? Yeah, did you see Beyond Van Gogh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was there.
Well, I don't know about you, I didn't know what to expect, but my wife and I walked around and there were immersed in this painting, and spinning around with us.
You just feel.
I almost threw it up. But then I had a little vertigo go on, and Van Gogh was making me sting. But I think we liked the Van Gogh a little better because it was fresher, it was a new experience.
Well, because it was your first one.
Yeah. But then Monet was incredible too. I'm a bigger fan of Monet. I thought the music was awesome, but the combination of audio and visual. But I would recommend that you do see it. Go on now. Don't go on a Sunday. That's when people bring their kids. And it's,
Yeah, every time.
yeah, they can kind of really put a damper on things.
And like
It is. And I applaud whoever thought that up, and I think they're just going to keep doing other artists. But it's one thing to stare at a painting, but then you add audio to it and have it on the floor, on the ceiling, and animated. I think that was the best part. Was Van Gogh's paintings were moving, and you know, oh look, there goes his ear. All right, so I got yellow ochre, and I've got Prussian blue in there. I'm basically just letting the force do it. I'm not thinking this through on it, but you can see it's coming together. And having been an illustrator all those years, I sure like fine arts a lot better because you're not giving an assignment. You're painting. It was hard for me at first when I started doing fine arts. I bought a G-plate printer to sell prints of my work. And after all those years, it'd be like leaving the military for civilian. Suddenly, I'm not being told what to do anymore. I got to think of something. And it was projects like the 30 Days in Chromacopy and things like that that propelled me into a whole lot of other things. Now there's no problem thinking of things. Now it's a matter of how do I get it all done. And then the commissions come along. I have a commission right now. The lady, she went on a rhino safari, and she's part of a conservation effort. She shot the thing, and I was all appalled when I said, "Oh, it's so sad." I love it. Goes, no, we tranquilize it so we can tell. But then she gets the trophy shot behind it with the dart gun, so she gets, you know, anybody shot a big game, but they're actually helping the rhinos. And So I have to take her to lift that line, yeah. But I did not know that's how they did that now. And it. I don't know what, she's got big money, and then she paid a lot to do that. And those are how they pay for the conservation efforts.
Do you say no to commissions?
Usually if I don't have time, I haven't had anybody ask me to do anything that would, if I find it appalling, I wouldn't do that. But usually it's like, will you paint my kid? I said, let me see a picture of the kid. I'm sorry. I used to do a lot of portrait executives for annual reports. And I'll tell you, they hand me a picture. I paint it pretty realistically when they said, oh, it's way too heavy. I don't look like that.
Oh, gee.
There's a little bit of narcissism there. And, they think they're Brad Pitt, but they're really, Costello. And adds another pool of water here and let it dance a little. I'm not gonna go to the edge on most of these branches, because I like that rock edge. And I also don't want it to be too colorful, so I'm gonna get some grayish color in there. And you can, even when your brush is, you've still got things pretty wet, if you do a dry brush, it works to some degree. You get a little of this organic look to it. That's. I have a friend who's been a professional watercolor artist for a long time. I was watching him in the tree once with branches, and he took into a small brush and he drew his branches out with that. And he put the paint on it, and the paint settled in the indentations, and it gave it a whole different look. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I don't have the heart to do that arches.
You got a picture with the spot out part of there.
Oh.
Now that this down here is
Thank
It
you.
dried quite a bit, and it adds some substantial water to that. My friend I mentioned, Tom Linder, he does these beautiful plein air watercolor paintings. He says he prefers doing the oils because he can stand up and work on an easel. Doesn't work so well with watercolors. It was, but with all the mention, when your feet long enough, you find your little favorite things and you find your niche. And that's always fun when you find your, it's like finding the right shoes. Didn't you mention my Hey Dude shoes? Any of you fellas ever had Hey Dude shoes? I'm wearing them right now. They're so great because you don't have to lace them. That's a lot of work. You just put it into them and they weigh next to nothing. Highly recommend them. If they need to take a break at any point, that's fine.
Yeah, we need some walk around.
I was getting something covered with cinnamon back earlier.
Well, we take a break now, so we can just take like a 5-minute break.
Sure, this is a good time for this to dry.
Okay.
Are we live?
Okay, here we go.
All right, so this is coming dry. And because I'm gonna expedite some of this just because there's a lot left to do here and I want to cover more things. So there are branches all over the place in here. This is gonna be easier for me to paint that upside down. So I'm gonna turn this around. It's because if I painted them like this, you're shoving your brush away.
That's true.
It's always better to pull toward you. In fact, I think the way we're built, God gave us hands with, built to draw. It's on a hinge. So I tell my students when you draw like this. Draw a circle like this, not like this. We're hinged. And if you consider the anatomy of your hand, same for painting. So one of the challenges with watercolors is I don't put your arm on stuff that's still wet. You want to constantly turn it around and work on different areas. So I'm going to start adding some of these branches here. And when you look at them, you know, that's probably about half as many that were on that tree. You can overdo it on a paint if you draw it the way it really is. It's just too flaky. So I'm going to start out with these pretty wet, but some color in them. And I think what works well, I'm going to paint a few branches here. You always want to make sure your branches are the fattest at the base. It always looks a little goofy when they get bigger, the further away they get from the tree. So I'm going to fill in 2 branches, kind of fade this one out. Well, I'm going to go in with my dark blue watercolor and just put a little and some brown too. And if you're painting branches like this, you don't want them to be an even color like this. Because there's light hitting them, they're going to go from dark to light. So I'm going to intermittently I fixed out a little cardinal here that I'm going to not paint over. All right, so you see how that's blotchy? I don't want a consistent color on there. It just looks fat, flat, and fakey. So those are drying. Then I'm going to move away from it so I'm not touching those. And work on a few branches over here. And again, fattest at the base. And then a branch, I just purposely put twists and knobs and things in there. They're just, you know, these aren't supermodels. They're not symmetrical. They're not perfectly even. They're full of twists and turns. I've got overlap from a branch I've done before. I'm just going to darken that up to hide the fact that that overlap. So when that happens, it's no big deal. So my light source is coming from here, so I know automatically these branches are all going to be darker on the bottom. And while that dries, I'll do another branch that doesn't touch that.
They think you did put that kind of cord, right?
Sorry?
He puts back on his word. No. Okay.
It says in top left corner. No, that's good.
Is there people watching us
Yep.
that aren't? Hello.
Yep.
So you want to do these fast. But not interweird learn them. And then while that's still wet. And there it is. Has anybody here tried gouache before?
Yes.
Or gouache your friend?
Yes.
I'm just finding time, you know.
I could like.
The hands that doesn't fall, but the girls, we just, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. But they make these water-based oils now that I've been working with, and I kind of like them. And it's cleanup. Like, I just don't want all the mess and the slow drying and all of that. Now, right here, I brushed on that. There, you can see that little flaw. That just became a branch. I twist it around. Whatever. Yeah. So by pulling the lines away from me, it's real easy to make them. If I were pushing them, it doesn't work as well.
How do water-based oils differ from acrylics?
They dry up. Well, they don't dry as fast. You can still move them around longer than you can acrylics. But they should have brought one here. They just look like a regular oil. But acrylics, when they dry, they're shiny. I don't like the shiny surface when you go to blend other paints. To me, it's like painting on a plastic bag. It's just not where, when you're using watercolor paper, the paper has bite to it. It's like you're etching into it with your paint. I love that. I had friends years ago jump on the digital bandwagon, and they started doing their art with a mouse and a Wacom tablet and whatever. And after years of doing that, selling their art, they told me I lost, that I really lost something. The tactile feel of working on papers, it was really something special. And he said, now your final product is on a thumb drive. And you print it out, it's not the same. So I am really glad I never jumped on that wagon.
I was surprised, the watercolor oils compared to the developer and, you know,
The price, did you say?
yeah.
It's all expensive. It's shocking, what you pay for these. And I remember when these were a couple of bucks a tube, they're about, I don't know, $8-10 for a small tube now. These bigger ones, that's probably $20.
Yeah.
Now, those are ways. But I remember in college out in California in 1979, in the bookstore, they had rolls, 5-foot tall rolls of Archie's watercolor.
Wow.
It was like 100 feet by what, 4 feet, $60. And I thought, this is a fortune. I used that paper for 30 years. There was so much paper. Now you had to lay books on it for a week because it had been in a roll for so long. But I really didn't know what a golden egg I had. And then once you use the good stuff, there's no going back. Like you talked about the crappy stuff, that's just torture. When you're used to using good stuff, and then you go to, I'm not knocking them at Hobby Lobby. They can, our master's touch. You bring that thing home, you go, this is what they wrap my crackers in.
postcards, and I just can't buy a whole sheet of ours, just 300 to cut into 4x6s. I have it in front of me. I have one at home and I just can't cut it like that.
Yeah,
So then I paint on the ground and stuff.
well, my condolences.
Grow, no, big grow.
I mean,
Get over it.
Whatever the phone is for.
so a long time ago, I had a neighbor with a print shop and he went on a business. And he said, would you like some paper? And I come home and there's a pallet, 100% rag paper. Made in Germany, sitting in my garage, and it's like 36 by 48 sheets. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I donated it to the Chamber of Commerce down in Marengo. I said, give this to a school. So I called her the other day. I didn't know I'd be teaching again. I said, did you ever give that paper to the school? Because no, it's still sitting there. So I went down and got it. As far as I can figure, it's $5,000
Oh, no, that's.
worth of paper. It was hundreds and hundreds of pounds, of 36 by 48, 100% rag. Now, it was for printing, but it's rag. So I figured I chopped it up. Each sheet I can get, I think, 24 workable sizes for them. So I just got the school drawing paper for like 10 years.
It's good to teach at least that longer.
I'm trying not to get serious on you. But having done it for a little while now, I'm thinking, I'm doing the most important thing I can be doing. I've been painting a long time. I got, but if you can help form a little mind, and I gotta say, I love the faculty. They're very devoted.
Is this at a public school?
This is a private Christian school. And these parents, they've got skin in it. So they care. So they come to teacher conferences. We just had a fundraiser called Iron Faith where we brought in 6 chefs. And we filled the gymnasium with tables. We sold 400 tickets and for $85 a piece. And we sold all the tickets out. So these 6 chefs do a cooking competition. And they fed all 400 people from all 6 stations in an hour. And then the 2, we would vote on the chefs, and the ones that won competed up on the main stage in front of 400 people. They bring out a box and the chefs don't know what's in there. Yeah, so it turned out it was pork loin, pomegranate, and some other thing. They came out with just amazing dishes, and then 3 professional judges judged it and picked the winner. But what moved me was the community support. We sold all these raffle tickets. One guy from Kunis, he owns car dealerships everywhere. They donated a brand new RV trailer, all equipped.
Wow.
And $100 per ticket, and we sold tons of them. I didn't win it. Swap 4 tickets, and my wife said, if we win that, it's my she shit. Yes, sorry, honey. Some more branches here without interference, and then I'm going to fade them out before they get to the edge. And I'll try never to use a paper towel to blot my paint. I'm not averse to that, but my students do it every 5 seconds. And when they draw, he said, how do we blend it? I was hesitant, but I said, okay, I brought in toilet paper. Okay, this is good to blend with, but we don't call it toilet paper. What's it called? I don't know. So the kids all through class. One thing there is graphite drawings. Oh, because I see them with their fingers and all of that, and they get their skin oil all over them. I said, okay, time to pull the artwork. All right, so you can see, I want my branches blotchy. And in the end, that gives it the effect of light coming through the trees, like hitting some branches, not others. But also, considering that light source, there's gonna be drop shadows just all over the place. So you don't really have to be really strategic about this. That just tells the viewer, there's a branch up here somewhere, or over here, and it's casting that shadow. You don't have to worry about order in the right place. You just have to be consistent as far as the side it's on. If the light's up here, it's gonna hit the bottom and this side.
Did you create this tree or did you photograph a tree?
I took a picture with my cell phone, so when I worked on this one, I looked at my cell phone. Or I may have printed it out, but for most things, I don't stick religiously to my reference. I just, okay, does it look good, or it's gonna look better if I do this. So that's why I end up throwing cardinals into scenes or birds. It's this one you look at here. That rusty caboose, as magnificent as it wasn't complete on its own. So I threw in my favorite guitar, and I threw in a sandhill crane, and I think it helps the piece.
Yeah.
And then it gives a little mystery. It shows people see really mysterious. And I just thought, man, a crane would look cool. And then it's no deep philosophy to it or anything. I mean, I do those too. I've tried harder lately to totally shed my illustration background where you assign things and do things with me. So I did one that was a big hit lately, and I just have a guy facing a tornado, just horrendous cloud in front of him. He's standing there in a suit with a little umbrella. The whole thing was about facing storms and life. And it was a big hit. And then I did another one about a lady on a cliff in the ocean with waves crashing all around her. She's playing a violin, and she's got a white gown and there's white notes flying. And it's just called The Silent. And it's about, I was thinking about music. Lately I'm listening to lots of classical music while I work, and it does something to your circuitry. We were talking about it during the break, the magic of music. We can't explain it on paper, but you listen, it can make you cry. You go, how's that work? A lot of music makes me cry for other reasons. I play music in my class, and they complain, well, that's music, and I said, you don't watch it, I'm gonna play hold that. If anybody's polka fans, I need to know what else. It's just a medium, it's a sound I can handle for about 10 minutes, and I go, that's enough.
I was trying to imagine painting to that.
I wouldn't do well. I think one of my big frustrations in life is that you just can't do it all. When I listen to music, I'd love to spend my life exploring music. When I eat really good food, I wish I was a chef.
Yeah.
And next week, I might want to be a farmer. But then as an artist, you encapsulate everything. You can paint anything. Well, the beauty of doing a book like a kid's book, I've done hundreds of those over the years. Everything you do, you have to research. So you learn a little bit about everything. And the more you learn, you realize, I don't know much at all. There's so much more. I used to illustrate for World Book encyclopedias, and they paid really poorly. But the challenge was fun because they had to be perfect. It was worldwide. And they couldn't pay me much, so I would say, well, can you pay me in encyclopedias? I had 8 sets of encyclopedias. Goodwill didn't want it.
Now they're a collector's item.
Yeah. Well, they're coming back around. So I mentioned I'm buying vinyl records again. I got rid of them all when CDs came along. I thought, not gonna get any better than this. And you know, vinyl albums outsold CDs starting last last fall. Everybody's going back to vinyl. And I kept my stereo from being a chair here, and it sounds great. I use a turntable, so I told my wife, we're gonna play our first album together.
Huh.
I put it on and we were, I think, having a glass of wine out in the backyard, and I had speakers outside and we're listening. And it comes to an end. I said, man, I thought they were longer than this. And she said, I think you turn it over. They're just long. It's beyond. And don't fire exactly as they used to. Okay, it's just a little slower. And we would eventually figure out that, hey, there's music on the other side. But- Here, I'm gonna do some more branches. Nice and wet. I do a lot of whispering. How am I doing on film?
About 5 minutes.
Oh, that's it?
That's it.
So you two, oh. The bird. All right. So we're gonna do it. Think of the bird in here. And you just pull out some vermilion and some raw sienna or burnt sienna. You try to have them, so. I'm glad when you're having fun. I was warned when I started teaching about the teacher lounge. And if their parents will bring in donuts and bagels and pastries, and they said, don't fall victim to that 10 pounds a year thing. Teacher, because you come in there all healthy and thin and you leave. Oh, you've been to the teacher's lounge. It'd be easy if they weren't good. But these parents go to Panera, a simple bakery and thing. It's a hard thing to pass. You've been to Simple?
Yeah.
Well, restaurants, you should have either, but who's familiar with my area? There's a restaurant called John.
Oh, yeah.
You've been,
Yep.
so you know, have you tried their bananas washed with bread? So well, change their life. I didn't know anything that tastes that good. But we took one bite of that and we couldn't even talk. We just went, no, how can anything taste that good? Well, Jonathan is not even a trained chef. He just learned taught himself. He used to be up in North County and he opened this restaurant. It's the best food we've found anywhere ever.
Is it in Williamsburg or Geneva?
That is in the old part of Delaware. It's called Jonathan's on Brick Street. There's an old brick section with the big fiberglass elephant that he's across the street. It's a 3 times a year restaurant, unless you're uber wealthy. But you come out of there thinking that was a good value.
Okay.
So that's where the bird is going to see, I'll build them up. But we've got this limited palette of blue and brown. And you always need a center focus on a painting. So I'm gonna choose the card. So keep me aware of the clock, please. And if you want me to go over on the other two. Because you're all pretty normal. Nice simple. Yeah, pastries. I'm just curious down here, what do you buy your art supplies? Pickwick and Schaumburg or?
Online.
Yeah, Repro graphics in Crystal Lake is real good. Reprogram.
That's the big one. Okay, I think they still call it the black, but yeah. There's one that's the first house, it's also a shadow and I'm not.
Heavy on gouache here. And you can do really nice dry brush. With gouache. It works, it behaves like watercolor. Just shows up a little better.
You're waiting till the underpainting is totally dry, right?
It's 90% dry. You can move around.
Oh, okay.
And I can't recommend good watercolor paper anymore because it makes all the difference. You just, the crappy stuff, it just doesn't behave. It's there. Where this, is so durable. And it'll take a ton of water, and if you go 300 pounds, you don't end up like this. That is frustrating, then all your water pools in the low areas. Do some more dry resolution here. All right, I'm gonna do a little bit of detail around this knot hole. So I'm gonna go a little more opaque. And do some of the newer lines. And the key thing with these is just don't get into a pattern. It needs to be completely organic.
Why don't they make paper that's deckled all the way around?
So you have to buy that tool. And you guys are so. I used it once. I just bought it because I saw my framer using it.
Is it like a ruler that's?
It's a plexiglass thing with a ragged edge cut in with plastic. We took the clean edge of the watercolor paper. I said, because I want to float it, but I don't like that clean edge. He goes. And it looked just like.
Oh, it didn't, weren't you afraid the paper would veer in a different direction?
The beer was in his hand. She didn't. There'll be some trepidation, but I think the key was you do it fast. And it was.
How big of a tool was it?
His is about this long, so if it's a big painting, you might have to do two things, but it worked.
Do you use a lot of the paper or have the hair?
He did it on if I was tearing this edge here, he put it on the inside. And he grabbed this little thing, he did it with some needle nose pliers. And he just went like this. And then I had a second painting that was a bigger piece of paper and he had more to work with, but either way, it worked. And because I've always wondered, okay, how can you do that?
What's that thing called?
I'll find out.
A straight edge, a crooked edge.
It's a wayward edge. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Bob.
Oh, thank you. I talk a lot. So
That's all right, no.
you're proud. Thank you much.
Could you have him put his reference photo under the camera for us too?
Can you hold up your?
It's reference to reference to
Reference.
side by side.
Yes,
Oh.
he's not finished. It'd be nice to see the
Hold on, let me get this out of the way here. Down a little bit.
A lot of
There you
detail.
When it's finished, is it going to be as dark as the original? or
No.
going to be lighter?
No, this I was using just because people responded to it a lot. I intended for this one to be more watercolor than that
Okay.
and looser. I don't want to ever paint the same thing twice. So if this ends up real nice, I'll put it on my website.
Nice.
So.
And thanks again. We'll see you guys. You guys.
Thank you. Very good, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
David.
Thank you, David.
Look at that. Oh, would you have, wanted to do that?